chance to hear it, so let her tell it. People on the streets say Sabrina speaks. Tune into the show, she will let you know. Tell all your friends and family. Real talk is no joke. You get the news straight up from grassroots and concerned. You hear some people gone. So tell all your friends to tune in to
Good evening, Cayman. I'm Sabrina Turner, and welcome to Sabrina Speaks, your daily dose of clarity, truth, and community insights. Every weekday from 5 to 6:30 p.m., we're tackling the issues that affect you, from national headlines to grassroots concerns. Whether you're in traffic or winding down your day, this is your chance to hear it straight and speak your truth. So buckle up, Cayman. We're not holding back.
This is the show. We gotta let you know. Now we got to go.
And now here's Sabrina.
Is hearing me this evening, and we don't have a repeat of what was happening yesterday. Good evening, Miss Barbara. I see you. Welcome to another episode of the Sabrina Speaks. Yes, we are Voices of the Islands, Conversations for the World, the podcast where voices rise, stories unfold, and inspiration takes center stage. Now, this evening, I'm quite sure you have seen the promo, but we're going to take we got a special episode here line up for you. And this is a special one because we're going to be taking a closer look at the verdict in the trial surrounding the death of a toddler, Elicity Powell. After days of deliberations, the jury found the defendant not guilty for murder or manslaughter, returning a guilty verdict only for the charge of abduction. Now, sentencing, as we know it, will be set for later this date, and I'll be joined later on in the show by our very own Sandra Hill, and also joining me is you got two co-hosts this evening. We'll be joined by Alfred as well as we unpack the outcomes and what this means for the community and the wider conversation around justice. So we will be joined later on. This is going to be a different episode. We are hoping that we could have some maybe have some family members as well joining us on this special episode of Sabrina Speaks. So I want to thank you and welcome you all for joining me on this show this evening. I'm your host, Sabrina Turner, and it's good to be here with you, and welcome back. Now, like I said, it's always good to bring you this episode or Sabrina Speaks here. And this is going to be taking a different twist here as we're accustomed to here on our Friday episode. But please note that the number to join in on the conversation is 936-8255. And I must let you know that the views expressed by callers, guests, and online commenters are their own and not those of Bridge Media Limited, its affiliates, the Sabrina Speak Show, or the host. This program is for general information only and not a substitute for legal, medical, financial, or professional advice. Now, all participants are reminded to speak responsibly and respectfully. Any content that is defamatory, discriminatory, unlawful, or harmful is strictly prohibited and will not be endorsed or tolerated. Now, however, you're streaming us live from this evening or tuning in, continued participation by listening and viewing implies acceptance of this disclaimer. Like I said, 936-8255 is the number to join in on the conversation. You can also feel free to send me a WhatsApp. I will keep you anonymous here. Make sure you continue to like, share, and follow the page with your friends and family. So one, you're always notified, and two, you're never missing an episode of Sabrina Speaks as we continue here to build this space one episode at a time. For all of you newcomers, welcome. Please, so you don't get lost and you're liking the content, you like how we're holding the show down here for you, please follow us And if you're on YouTube, subscribe and give us a thumbs up so that you're always notified. Before we go into my guests or co-hosts that will be joining us this evening, let's take a look at this evening's weather forecast, and we'll do a shortened segment of the news as well for today, because we are going to switch gears this afternoon, as I alluded to earlier on, and speak about this case. The compliments of our friends there at the Cayman Islands National Weather Service. Let's take a look at the forecast for this evening and into tomorrow. The synopsis is calling for showers that will linger near the Cayman area early tonight as a tropical wave continues to drift over the Western Caribbean. Now, drier and more settled conditions are expected throughout the weekend, with little in the way of shower activity as a weak plume of Saharan dust trails around the periphery of a high-pressured system. Now, marine conditions are expected to begin to gradually deteriorate and are expected to remain occasionally rough this weekend as the pressure gradient begins to increase over the Northwest Caribbean. Radar imagery shows widely scattered showers mostly south and west of the Cayman area that is moving westwards. The forecast for tonight is calling for partly cloudy skies with slight haze and a 30% chance of showers with possible thunder. Temperatures will fall to the low 80s and winds will be east to northeast 10 to 15 knots. Seas will be moderate with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. Tomorrow's forecast is calling for mostly fair skies with slight haze and a 20% chance of showers. Temperatures will raise near the low to mid 90s with a heat index of 108 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, winds will be easterly 10 to 15 knots with higher gusts, and first decreasing and becoming north to northwest from the afternoon. Now, seas will be moderate to rough with wave heights of 4 to 6 feet. There will be a high tide this evening at 10:40, a low tide at 5:04 a.m. tomorrow morning, and another high tide is expected at 11:25. The outlook is calling for mostly fair conditions throughout the weekend, with some early morning showers that are possible on Sunday. Occasionally rough seas again are expected to continue through the forecast period, with a small craft advisory remaining in effect as results. Now, from Monday, another tropical wave will make it into the Western Caribbean, and with this, cloudy skies, fresh and strong winds, and along with isolated thunderstorms can be expected. I want to thank our friends over there at the Cayman Islands National Weather Service for that. Now let's take a look for this evening local news right here on Sabrina Speaks. We see where Premier Andre Ebanks says that the Cayman delegation had excellent engagement at the NAIC summer meeting in Ohio this week. With Cayman's NAIC equivalency application now formally submitted, the team met directly with U.S. regulators to discuss the application, regulatory alignment, and strengthening cross-border cooperation. Now, the Premier thanked the Parliamentary Secretary, Julie Hunter, ministry representatives, CMO officials, and CIRCA attendees for their teamwork and expressed appreciation to the state of Ohio for hosting. In other local news, we see where the Cayman Islands government has released a summary of cabinet meeting held on Wednesday, August 5th. Cabinet noted the governance policy framework and the application process for prohibited immigrants' entry permit requests. Now, ministers approved a funding reallocation for the Ministry of Social Development and Innovation and the National Cancer Policy and the Tobacco Amendment Bill for transmission to Parliament. Cabinet also authorized drafting instructions to amend the Tax Information Authority Act. We see in Little Cayman, the bid for UNESCO World Heritage status is being positioned as a major opportunity to elevate the island and its pristine coral reefs onto the global stage. Official says the denomination highlights the ecological significance of the sister islands and aims to secure recognition among the world's natural wonders. The proposal underscores ongoing efforts to protect the reef and strengthen international awareness of Cayman's unique marine environment. In also local news, the opposition is calling for accountability following a new report that outlines long-standing failures in governance and financial management at the Health Services Authority. Now, the assessment conducted by local consultants highlights systemic issues that have persisted over several years. Opposition members says that the findings demand urgent attention and action and strengthen oversight, improve financial controls, and restore public confidence in HSA's operation. As we close out this segment, let's take a look at the business markets closing for today. U.S. markets ended lower today with all three major indices pulling back from recent record highs. The Dow Jones closed down at 0.13% at 53,771, and the S&P 500 slipped 0.18% to 7,785. And the Nasdaq fell at 0.36%, finishing at 26,705. Global markets were mixed with modest gains in Japan and South Korea, while European and Asia indices modestly declined. There you have it. That is our local news and our markets closing for today, right here on the Sabrina Speaks. Regional news will be retained as of next week. Welcome, welcome, one and all. And it's good to have you joining me here for another episode of Sabrina Speaks. It is a Friday evening. Normally it's Free Flow Friday here on the Sabrina Speaks platform, but this evening is a special episode that will be surrounding around 5:30, surrounding a verdict of a case that has shook the nation. And we will be speaking, and I'll be joined by Auntie Sandy and Alfred as our guest this evening as we recap and have a conversation and a call for justice here at around 5:30 this evening. I want to extend welcome and reminder notices as well of the East End and Northside local farmers market that will take place tomorrow from 7 until around 5. And please note all the sponsors, and remember, for their students of East End, Northside, and the Clifton Hunter High School, if you need any uniform adjustments, Needles and Friends will be providing free alterations for like buttons, zippers, any adjustments, that sort of stuff. And you're being asked to take your children down to the grounds for any alterations, and this will be free of charge. Let's take this opportunity as well to say happy birthday to all of those persons who are celebrating birthdays today. Happy birthday to all of you celebrating birthdays. We're wishing you many, many more. And that's from all of us here on the Sabrina Speaks platform. Maybe you're celebrating an anniversary or a very important milestone. Maybe you're celebrating going back to school. To all of my teachers, I gotcha. Well, you know what? Whatever it is, just be thankful. Just be thankful, but we're celebrating and we're sending all the love out to you. But we cannot be remiss of those persons amongst us who are mourning the loss of a loved one. We want you all to know that our thoughts and prayers are with you all as you navigate. Yes, that'll be fine. As you navigate this time as well. So our thoughts and prayers for you going out to all of those persons who are navigating any challenges or difficulties at this time. Miss Barbara G is joining us. Happy Friday to you, my friend. How are you? What plans you got for the weekend, my sweet? I hope you're going to be behaving. Or are you going to go out and spend some time with family? And guess what? Look at here. Miss Donnie is in the house. Yes, Donnie is in the house, one of our content creators in Bloom. And everyone, if you don't know who Donnie is, that's Dawn. She is the owner of Green Valley Nursery, who really just brightens up this segment of Sabrina Speaks daily and sharing with us a lot of beautiful flowers. And I must say, Dawn, thank you so much for sharing some of the beautiful images with us. Yes, and Connie Bonnie is also a content creator in Bloom, and she is right now off. But that's okay. We're not going to hold it against you, girl. We're not at all, because she too is very loyal. We got also content creators sharing other forms of blooming, and I'm talking blooming when it comes to food. Yes. We have some tantalizing dishes here that is being shared this evening to definitely tease your palate. And maybe you will hear where and what it was and all that good stuff here. But we just want to acknowledge all of you and thank you all for continuously showing up here and you are greatly appreciated. But please, the number to join us if you want to comment and join in on the live is 936-8255. That's the number to be a part of the lively discussion, because we always, you know how we do it here. There's always something to learn and definitely something to take away. Yes. So I see where Aliano is in the house. Happy Friday to you, my friend. No Jerry Springer Beach for you today? Oh my goodness, Aliano. Oh Lord. He's also saying, I'm vexed. No justice for that beautiful soul. We're going to hear more. We're going to hear more. Just make sure you share the link, share the live. And we're going to be hearing more about this, as well be joined by my two guests. And we could probably have some family members as well weighing in on this. Nathan Adolphus, good evening to you as well. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Aliano is saying the mother needs to come forward. Andrew is weighing in. Good evening to you as well. Happy Friday, my friend. Connie Bonnie is in a different time zone, staying up late with us because where you're at, it's 11:19. Good night to you and to my friends in Australia. I saw your message. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you guys are a whole day ahead of us. And yeah, we're all over the world. Thank you for your loyalty. Thank you for streaming with us. And every day from Monday to Friday from 5 until 7, Sabrina Speaks is here. Yes, and good evening to you as well. I'm seeing you guys got I think this is your last heat wave over there in the UK. For all of my people in the United Kingdom, oh gosh, you guys have been slammed with these heat waves. Yeah, that heat over there is totally different. Yeah, Mr. Geraldo. Good afternoon to you as well. God bless you more, Cayman Islands. Ah, so nice. Thank you. Thank you. You're becoming a regular. It's good to have you here. Look at bad girl, Carol. And I know who's in there. Big up the Slay Crew, of course. And my friend, Miss Mattis. Yeah, she's in there making trouble. I wonder what hairstyle you're going to pull off, Miss Mattis. What are you going to pull off? I'm just talking your business. Ashley and Selena, the nail tech girl. I changed her name again today. Oh, so help me. But to all of you, you want the best braids. You want the best boho. Yes, shameless plug for the Slay Crew over there. Ashley is the bomb. Carol is the bomb as well. And Selena, yeah, the nail tech, she gets a different name, different episode. It all depends, girl. Just go down to Slay. If you know where high tech electronics is, Slay Beauty Bar is right there. Connie, no intent to send until I get back home. So you're saving them up. Well, you know what? We got another content creator that's sending us, our content creator in Bloom, some tantalizing dishes here, Connie Bonnie. Yeah, I wonder which Asian he has been around. Well, I'm going to tell you a little story here before we get into that segment where we talk about this case. I was invited out to lunch today, and thank you for the invitation. And as content creators, these are some of the delicious stuff that we engaged in. And Connie, you'd be so disappointed. I had my hopes up for a fine gentleman that was there. And I just got so disappointed when he introduced me to an Asian out of nowhere. So yes, I will continue to share the pictures, and maybe on one episode of their show, we will get the true revelation of really what's going on. So Connie, and for all of my regulars, you will know exactly who I'm talking about, who shares the food. Look at this. Isn't this delicious? But there's a story behind all of this. My heart was broken. And for all of you who love that voice, who are regulars of the Sabrina Speaks, yeah, heartbroken to the core. So we're going to do a little investigation, Connie, but he's cheating on us. And yes, we were right. There's an Asian somewhere out there. I'm narrowing it down. So Connie, when you get back, you and I are going to go in some incognito trips. And look at this, look at this, look at this. Yeah, all of that. And yeah, and these are mocktails. Mocktails. Yeah. So what he did, you can't blame him though, Akani, and for all of the regulars of the Sabrina Speaks, he made sure that my stomach was nice and full so that when the big reveal happened, at least I didn't have it on an empty stomach. Oh, Connie, loon pasa pasa, right here, girl. Loon pasa pasa. Yes, my there. Oh my gosh, you can't wait. Yes, we can't wait to have you back as well. But it's good fun for those of you who understand this segment. You will get the joke, and we are into each other's business like you would not believe. You let me in, and we're definitely going to take it on. We're going to add on. We're going to take off. We're going to spice it up. We're going to, we just turn up the heat. But yeah, Connie, that's what he did, you girl. But at least he fed me. He fed me. Oh, who's celebrating a birthday? Oh, Tika is celebrating a birthday. Happy birthday to you, Tika, and many, many more to your team down there. I hope they're treating you well here on your birthday. The owner of Slay Beauty Bar. Yeah, look at that. All that delicious. Yeah. There we go. Ready? So, we into the pasa. So I got one of my guests that are joining us. I got the other one too, just lurking in the background. So we're going to get some more of that information and we're going to share it with you. Let's see. Let me pull you in the back. Yep. Yeah. Pull you in. There we go. So, yeah. Make sure you share the link in the live so that we can get in on this. And yes, I can only see them through the cameras. Oh, okay. That's okay. That's fine. You'll be back here. Hello, Margie. It's good to have you join us. Thank you for being with us this evening. Happy Friday. Miss Bonnalie is joining us as well. And you too are sharing how upset you are. I'm quite sure this is going to be a hot topic. And yes, we are going to be breaking this down and talking about it more. And yes, we can understand. Many people are scratching their head about how can you abduct somebody, be guilty of abduction, and then, it's not making any sense. But we're going to break it down. You're invited, 936-8255. You see the number there on your screen. If you want to join in. Ms. Howard, hi, Ms. Friend. Yvette, how are you, my love? Yes. Oh my goodness. Even Cameron is jumping on today. Wine Down Friday. What's your wine of choice this evening? Well, we changed it up a little bit, Cameron. This is going to be a special episode where we're going to be breaking this down and speaking more about the trial recap of baby Elicity and the verdict that was handed down. So we'll be joined by Auntie Sandy and Alfred to discuss this and break this down anymore. I'm just too upset. I just had some mocktails. And yeah, hanging out with some cool friends. And yeah, so we're going to be talking and just breaking this down. Yes. Mr. Real. What you say? Sweet Mr. Real. That's what he did. That's what he did. Is an Asian. Remember, I told you, something was up with that individual. You see all those tantalizing dishes they've been sharing with us? I knew something was up, but at least he fed me. So I didn't have to take it on an empty stomach. God knows I would have ended up on Mile Road. The lick, it would have licked me down. Oh, yeah. I had high hopes, though, in the back of my mind. Did you hear him praying this morning? No, but I heard it is something. Well, maybe we may get one under the circumstances. He is very good at that much. I give him credit for that. And of course, I'm quite sure we are going to hear maybe some of those prayers a little later on. And maybe he will more than likely give a prayer for the family, for the nation, because of how upset we are of this unfortunate situation. I mean, well, yeah, we're not going to go too much into it, but the anger that people are really expressing right now, and I'm feeling that it is so timely to have this outlet for this space. I'm happy that we are able to provide this space so that we can hear from you and definitely just look at it, just break it down. Now that the case is done and the verdict is in, we can speak about it more openly. And so 936-8255 to join in on the conversation. Wake up, Cayman Islands. Some places caught a fire today. A nationwide alert was sent out on our phones about fires. Yeah, you guys have been having a lot of brush fires over there in the United Kingdom because the heat has been so bad. And Connie is saying, yes, that it was really, really bad last night. Tie a balloon to him so you don't lose him. Lord. Yes, Plain and Straight is also joining us this evening. Hello, good evening to you as well. Corrine Ebanks. My birthday was on Saturday the 9th. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, happy belated to you as well, Corrine. I hope that you had a very good birthday. Yes, I know other people are expressing how sad they are of this verdict. Some are sad, some are really, really upset. And I can understand it. I think we all are just very disappointed at the verdict. But it says a lot as well when you have a juror, when juries are deciding cases, it is what it is. But I've never, I haven't had that opportunity locally to serve, but I've served as juror before. And it's quite because of my job. I was a law enforcement person in an immigration, and you don't normally get chosen. So, yeah. But for those who have gone through this, the importance of a jury that, yeah. Ah, um, at lunch today, one of the individuals says, you're only as strong as your weakest juror in this case. You know that saying, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So yeah, if it's not unanimous, then oh my goodness. And we could break that down as well for what this means. Yeah, so the conversations that ensued was quite interesting. And that is why we are happy that we can provide this. And I said, break it down here for you. Connie is saying, Lisa, good evening to you as well. Happy Friday. My heart is broken for the little girl's verdict. You and so many more, Miss Lisa. Let's stick and stay with us and share the link as well. Let's see exactly what we're going to break down here. Yes. Yes, Connie. You're so right. This makes Kim and Brack 0 out of 3 unsolved murders. And that's another thing. That is another thing that we have to talk about as well. In general, what's going on? Is it case file management? Is it evidence? Is it how it's presented? Well, you're in the right place this evening. You're in the right place this evening, and we're going to break it down to you. Nathan Adolphus, so who will get charged for murder? Very interesting question. Very, very interesting question. Is this means the whole case is done? Are there other persons that could be, we don't know. At this stage of the game, there could be an ongoing thing, maybe other evidence. We are going to break it down. Just stick with us, Adolphus. You may actually get the answer to that question from our guests and persons who are legal minded and have some idea of how it works. So yes, stick and stay with us here this evening. Yeah, Wembley was on fire, and we've been getting alerts and warnings. No barbecues, it's too hot. And I see where the Prime Minister has temporarily banned barbecues, grills. So, yeah, I saw that. Now, guess if we're ready, just give me a thumbs up and I will let you in. But welcome, one and all to the Sabrina Speaks show right here. I'm your host, Sabrina. And like I said, normally, this show is free flowing, light and airy, but that is not the feeling over the Cayman Islands today. And what I'm talking about is the verdict is in, and whether or not justice has been served based on this latest verdict. And we're going to be having this special episode that takes a closer look at the verdict in the trial surrounding the death of Little Miss Powell. Sorry here. And this is after days of deliberations. Actually, your people were at the edge of their seats. The whole island was like holding their breath. The jury found the defendant not guilty for murder or manslaughter and returning a verdict only for the charge of abduction. Now, at this point in time, we don't know what the sentencing will be like. That will be taking place at a later date. But you're in the right place. We're going to break it down, and you're free to call in and join in the conversation because I'll be joined by Auntie Sandy and Alfred as well, who will be joining me in the virtual studio as well in any moment. So yes. And you know what? Why don't we just turn it to how did we get away with murder? Do it on Kim and Brack? Is that what they're suggesting? I think they're saying that 3 murders right now in Cayman Brack has come to a not guilty verdict is what the person was doing. So yeah, it really begs to question what's going on. I don't know. I can't answer. I can't speak for that. So Cameron, I'm sure the verdict has a lot more implications that were not were not told. So let's see. Are we ready? Just give me an idea. Give me a thumbs up if we're ready. Yep. Are we? I want to pull these in. I'm going to pull in Alfred because he did such a wonderful job at the prayer this morning. I think it would be wise for us to start off with a prayer. I'm going to ask Alfred if he can actually start us off with that prayer. I'm going to pull Alfred into the studio here and just make sure that he is with us. Good evening, Alfred. Alfred, are you with me?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear, and I'm quite sure my audience will, or they will tell us momentarily. Now we know
Okay.
that you are one of our two guests. Miss Sandra will be joining us momentarily, and I'm hearing about this prayer that you did this morning. I missed it, but how fitting would it be for you to share a prayer, understanding how the country right now is feeling based on this verdict that has been received, and to just hold that family together? Um, would you be so kind to do a prayer for us this evening?
Certainly. I think it is a bit of a difficult time for everyone, like you said, the nation involved because of the verdict. So if everyone listening could just, I guess, bow their heads as I pray.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a difficult one for me, but Heavenly Father, today we lift up the family of little Alicity. We do not presume to know what is in their hearts tonight, Father. We do know that grief doesn't move in a straight line, and a day like today may bring many emotions at once, for which there's simply no words. So, Lord, I ask that you meet them exactly where they are. Simply hold them, Father. For the mother who has carried questions, memories, and the unbearable absence of her child, give her a strength that doesn't demand silence and a peace that doesn't require forgetting. For every grandparent, sibling, relative, and loved one who has carried this loss alongside her, surround them with gentleness. When words fail, let presence be enough. When sleep is difficult, Father, grant rest. And when memories return painfully, let love accompany them. And Father, where there are unanswered questions, give this family the grace to live without being consumed by them. Where there is anger, give them somewhere safe to place it. Where there is disappointment, do not let anyone tell them how they ought to feel. Where there is exhaustion after years of waiting and searching and listening and hoping and enduring, grant them permission simply to breathe. Protect them also from the noise of the world, Father, from careless opinions, speculation, gossip, and people who may speak about this case while forgetting that behind every headline is a family who loved the little girl. Help all of us to remember her first as a child who was loved. And Lord, we pray also for our Cayman Islands. This case has touched more than one family. It has touched a nation. In a country as small and as closely connected as ours, pain travels very quickly. Rumors travel quickly. Anger travels quickly. So, Father, we ask that you give us wisdom in how we speak, restraint in what we repeat, and compassion in how we respond. Keep us from becoming a people who consume tragedy as entertainment. Teach us to ask hard questions without becoming cruel, to demand accountability without abandoning fairness, and to seek truth without destroying one another in the process. Give wisdom and integrity to those entrusted with our justice system, our police, our courts, our medical professionals, our leaders, and every institution responsible for protecting the vulnerable. Where systems need strengthening, Father, give us the courage to strengthen them. Where mistakes have been made, give us the humility to learn from them. Where children are vulnerable, make us more watchful. Where families are struggling, make us more willing to notice. And let this nation never become so accustomed to tragedy that the suffering of a child becomes just another story we discuss and move on from. May Elicity's life remind us that every child in these islands is precious, every family deserves dignity, and every institution entrusted with human life carries a sacred responsibility. Lord, we ask for truth wherever truth can still be found, accountability where accountability is due, wisdom for those entrusted with justice, and humility for those of us watching from the outside. But above all tonight, Father, we ask for mercy and grace for this family. May they feel no obligation to call today closure. Some wounds do not close, Father, because a courtroom speaks. May they instead be given something quieter and more honest, the strength to continue, the freedom to grieve in their own way, and the reassurance that Elicity's life was greater than the circumstances of her death. Let her name be spoken with tenderness. Let her memory be protected with dignity. And when this family feels that the weight is simply too much to carry, Father, we ask that you carry what they cannot. Surround them tonight with people who know when to speak, when to listen, when to embrace, and when simply to sit beside them in silence. May love be louder than the noise surrounding this case. May compassion be greater than curiosity. May wisdom guide our nation. And may this family know, especially tonight, Father, that their little girl has not been forgotten. We place them, Father, and we place these Cayman Islands in your care. Amen.
For some reason, I'm not hearing you, Sabrina. Are you speaking?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. There we go.
Yes.
Yes. I want
Thank you so much for that prayer. It was, yes, it was very appropriate, and hopefully, I feel like we all need a moment with this one. This is a very difficult situation, undoubtedly.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of us are feeling today that justice has not been served. But as we see in that prayer, sometimes justice does not come immediately. Sometimes it takes more time. And I know that it's been a number of years already, but I have a very, very strong belief that no one will get away with what happened to this little girl. And so I think, first of all, I want to just extend my heartfelt just apologies to the family. I know this is obviously not the outcome that they would have wanted. And it's just a really, really difficult situation. But I think part of what we do, Sabrina, is we educate people. There's a lot of people confused this evening with this verdict. They don't understand what transpired here. And so what we aim to do today is to bring some degree of clarity to what happened with the trial so that people can understand. Because I think that through understanding, even the jurors who perhaps are now reflecting on their decision may learn something from this process. I have seen a lot of trials, and one thing that always strikes me is how many people, we continue to have a jury-based system, but I'm surprised at how many people don't quite understand how jurors work, how the system works, and perhaps we could, through this evening's program, shed some light on that, yes, with a view to educating people.
Yeah.
So if we can,
go ahead. Start,
No,
because
I
I know
was
you've been following this a lot, but I mean, with a verdict of this nature, And I'm hearing it even on the way home. How can one be found guilty for abduction but then get off? It's just, and then looking at the role of jurors, I think that is what we need to zoom in. You know, what happens behind the scenes when you end up getting a decision like this? How does it all work?
Yeah, this has got to be, just my humble opinion, one of the most bizarre verdicts I have ever heard of. Like, I'm not sure that I understand it because, okay, each charge obviously stands on its own to a certain extent. So yes, there is a legal definition of what abduction means, right? But if you're a juror and and it was, that part of it was a unanimous decision. So they all agreed that he abducted her. How can you say that he abducted her, but then he didn't have a part in her death? Because that's essentially what this verdict says to me. And I don't understand that.
Sandra, can I ask, right? Because I mean, I've been on jury duty before, and I've actually been on cases before, and I wanted to ask a question. Because one of the things that we were guided on when I was a juror on these two particular cases, the judge instructed us after hearing all of the evidence. It said to us that the judge was the authority on the law, and the jury is the authority on the facts. And that as a jury, we can look at all of the evidence, some of the evidence, or none of the evidence. But one thing that stood out to me that the judge said was, if even you have a shred of doubt in your mind, right? Because what I learned from being involved is that the accused is presumed innocent until proven beyond a shadow of a doubt to be guilty. The prosecution's job is to clear that doubt up for the jury.
Yes.
The defense is to put that doubt back into the jury's head, in a sense, right? Because you're there to defend the accused. If you have a shred of doubt, you are supposed to declare not guilty. It's only if you are convinced in your mind, based on the evidence, like I said, all of it, some of it, or none of it, that this person is guilty, like only then you can declare it guilty. And when you have 12 people that you have to convince, right? So I want your input on
Let
that.
me
We got a caller on hold. We have one call. Good evening, caller. You're live.
Good evening, Sabrina.
Good
And
evening.
I see Sandra's joining you.
Yes, and Alfred. We have two guests.
Okay. All right.
Co-hosting today.
Good evening to Sandra and to Alfred.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
First and foremost, I'd like to say that my heart breaks for baby Elicida's grandmother, as her
Yes.
paternal grandmother, and her father.
Yes.
I'll start there. And this verdict is no surprise to me, because what I saw coming here was one of two things, which was going to be an acquittal or a mistrial. But with what has happened, now it raises questions for me. Although I wasn't in court, but I was kind of getting, time, how should you say, step by step updates. And now correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm about to say something, but I want to make sure I understood this correctly. He was charged with three things, right? Murder, abduction, and what's the term they use for desecrating a dead body? Was that the three charges?
No, it was
No.
murder, in the alternative manslaughter.
No. Was he charged with manslaughter also?
No,
Not
that's
in
a
alternative after the
well,
fact.
I need to explain that. So that's a legal, that needs to be explained. So I'll explain
Okay,
exactly
so
what that is, but that's
okay, so let's not go there. Let me say why I brought that up. In the very beginning, and I've been around courthouse enough times, I've been around defense attorneys enough times, I've even been around the accused enough times. So if you are charged with murder, normally they will automatically include the lesser charge of manslaughter. But to go straight to murder and not include the lesser charge of manslaughter, you already come across as very arrogant. And especially when you have no evidence to support murder. Based on every question that the jury was posing to the judge, it was very clear they did not believe that he was the person that killed the child. What they believed is that he has knowledge of it, which made him an accessory. That's what their questions were surrounding, the accessory part. I believe that the judge erred in a couple of areas here because when for murder, it has to be unanimous, whether it's guilty or not guilty. And when it is not unanimous, that's a straight mistrial. If there is the lesser charge of manslaughter, then you can go back and deliberate for manslaughter. Now, that only requires a majority split decision, the majority being 9. So 3 can say, I don't agree. If 9 says he's guilty, it's guilty. And then the judge, after the fact, sent them back to consider manslaughter, something he wasn't charged with. So I think there was an error there as well. And then he was then found guilty of abducting the child when no evidence shows he even killed the child. The evidence shows that the child didn't walk there. The evidence shows the child didn't drown. I would say to all of this, first of all, let me say, this is one case, as sad as it might be, and as painful as it might be, the juror got it right, except for the abduction part. They got it right. And they spent the time and not rushing to a judgment based on emotions. And I don't mean just 12 people's emotions island wide. Where the prosecutor botched this case with this person and perhaps for any future justice for baby Elicity is that they only charged him. They should have charged all. Then you would have gotten convictions. They also argued they had cleared and eliminated everyone else. He was the only person that could have done it. Well, I'm sorry. Because if I were on that jury, I would have to come to the same conclusion that this jury came to. And as I said, as painful as it is, that the family didn't get half justice today, this to me rests with the prosecution. And I understand they brought in a special prosecutor to do this case. What I am further troubled by is that whether that's the case or not, but worse if it was, that after looking at this case, you didn't ask the question, where are the others? Or you didn't say, you cannot argue that it's only him. It was only possible that it could be him when there are others that the evidence points to by them implicating themselves, lying to the police, obstructing this investigation for 4 years. They've botched this case.
all
Well,
And
right.
I,
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that.
just a minute, please, Sandra. I am afraid that even if they were to now charge someone else, they can't charge him again because for murder, because double jeopardy is now attached. But even if they charge someone else, the prosecution's argument is now on record. And another defense attorney will use those same words to acquit the next accused person.
Well,
So I want to end where I started. My heart breaks today for his the baby Elizabeth's maternal grandmother and her father.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Okay, so just a couple things that I want to clarify. I think first of all, we need to do a case snapshot, and then there's some things that need to be explained because some of the things that were just said are actually not factually or legally accurate. And I do think that we owe it to this case to be as accurate as possible. So the verdict came through. This is a grand jury trial for murder. 5 women, 7 men. They obviously found Devin Emmanuel Wright Jr. not guilty of murder, but guilty of abduction of 2-year-old Felicity Powell. And that was delivered earlier this afternoon after roughly about 3 days of deliberation. The trial judge, Justice Emma Peters, Grand Court Judge of the Cayman Islands, I can tell you that she is extremely thorough. And even for the time that I was there and I saw when the questions were coming in during the deliberation and the way in which she consulted both the defense and the prosecution about the correct interpretation and response to those questions, I can tell you that she was setting up, and I said this to the family at the time on, I think that one might have been Wednesday. I said to them, she is making it impossible for whatever the outcome of this is, for this to be appealed on her giving incorrect instructions. Because when it is a jury trial, there's a very limited scope for any real appeals that can potentially happen. I just want to remind your listeners, I am not a lawyer, right? For the sake of clarity, I'm not a lawyer. I do not practice law. I work obviously for Cayman Mall Road in the capacity as a journalist, managing director. I do have a law degree. I've studied specifically criminal law, and I sit in court on occasion to listen to cases. And obviously, both in my studies as well as, writing and research, I do read criminal law decisions in cases all the time. That still doesn't mean that I'm an expert, and I am certainly, again, not an attorney at law. So I want to everybody keep that in the back of your head. But do I have a little bit of a better understanding than probably the average person when it comes to a lot of legal matters? I would say that would be a fair assessment to make. There were 2 charges. He was indicted on 2 separate counts, murder and abduction. Manslaughter is not a named charge, but it is left as an alternative to the jury. So the jury has it as a permissible alternative verdict to murder, right? And that remains, we can talk about this a little bit later, that remains how this mechanism works when someone is charged with murder. And I'm going to get into those details here in a second. The Crown's case, we have to admit, again, I don't know that I would say that they were negligent as much as sometimes I don't really care for the DPP's office. I think that they did the best with what they had. This is an entirely circumstantial case, meaning there are no eyewitnesses, there's no forensic link, there's no confession, there was no established motive. It is difficult under the best of circumstances to win a case that is wholly considered circumstantial in nature. The Crown's theory was one of elimination. In other words, there were 3 adults in the apartment with that child. The child's mother, Devin Wright Jr., and his cousin, I can't remember her name now, McLean, right? And so their position was to start with Devin Wright. Now, I have a theory that they may not be ending with him. So there is nothing stopping the DPP's office from having another bite at this cherry, not at him.
So it's not all over.
Not necessarily. Because as the caller said, they cannot really go after him again. But what they can do is go after the mother or even the cousin. And I've got a theory about why they did it in this particular order. The mother was willing, just from a factual nexus perspective now, the mother was willing to testify against Devon once their relationship ended, right? I suppose at the end of the day, her testimony was of limited usefulness, either because she doesn't know, if we take her at face value, she doesn't know anything more, anything further, or she's not being entirely forthcoming about everything that she does know. Because there's a motive. There's no doubt that there's a motive. And I don't want to get into the whole realm of speculation, but I think that we also need to understand and to know that the streets talk plenty about this case. And the streets have discussed what that motive likely was. And I think that, you know what, we just put everything on the line. That's how I feel about the situation. Now, his defense attorney, Stan Reese, who's a KC, argued, of course, that the evidence was circumstantial, the timing was somewhat uncertain, and the jury could not be sure to the criminal standard. On anything less than sure, the verdict has to be not guilty. Now, this criminal standard, it's important to understand what the criminal standard actually is. One of the key things that tells us how this jury was thinking were the jury questions that they came back with. Basically, they came back with the same question on more than one occasion, which means that there were members of the jury who were confused, right, about how to get to that guilty verdict. And so I am going to talk about some of that here as a consideration as well. To be very, very clear, the Cayman Islands Penal Code has offenses, manslaughter and murder, under Section 6, which is covered offenses against the person, Sections 180 to 188, in terms that track English common law directly, including retaining the historical phrase, of malice aforethought as the mental element of murder. So with all serious criminal offenses, there are two things that is required. There's the act, and then there's what is called the mens rea, right? The mens rea, a lot of us in sort of common English might think of it as the reason, the mental element. Like you intended to do it.
Right.
Right?
Guilty mind.
So the guilty mind. So yes, for murder, which is the highest charge of these, it requires a very different mens rea. That's where you have the phrase malice aforethought. The intent has to be there. Now, you can kill someone. There can be an unlawful killing of someone without the mental element required for murder. And that is where you get into it then being a manslaughter charge, or killing that would otherwise be murder, but for a recognized partial defense, right? Or you just don't have the mental element. So let me give you an example. If you and I go to rob the bank, and in the process of robbing the bank, you as my, co-robber, criminal, decides to pull out a gun and shoot someone. And I did not even know that you had a gun, right? You can't say that I had the mens rea required for the death of that individual. But if I had not been there with you committing that robbery, right? So it's a criminal enterprise. In the commission of one offense, you can commit a secondary defense, then that person would not have died. So you might be charged with murder, and I could be charged with murder and in the alternative, manslaughter.
Right.
Right? And that is what exactly has happened here. Manslaughter was very much on the table here for them to consider. So,
But Sandra, can I ask a question, right? Did Justice Peters give them manslaughter as an alternative?
yes.
They did.
It was fully explained. Yes, absolutely. And in fact, even today, earlier this afternoon, they came back and they asked questions about, where they, to again, give you an indication of what they were thinking. And the judge specifically said to them, right, that if you cannot find, I'm just trying to find a notation here because I actually took this down. But she actually said to them today that if you cannot find him guilty of murder, then you should consider, let me just read this to you, right? Because this came up exactly in the trial today, to be very, very clear. So what was said, 1 second here. So the judge said she received a note from the jury. So when they're deliberating, if they're unclear on matters of law, because as Alfred said earlier, when you're a juror, you are presented with the whole case. You hear the witnesses. Sometimes witnesses are live witnesses. Sometimes agreed statements are just read out in court. They have the bundle. They get to see evidence. They get to see photos, forensic pictures and reports, analysis. So there's a lot of information that they have to consider. But their job is to focus on the facts. Do they believe that factually this is what happened? Right. And it's the judge's role to then deal with issues of law. So at times the judge will say, we need to take a break. I need to remove the jury from here because this discussion has nothing to do with them. We need to make certain determinations.
That's what they call legal arguments, right?
Yeah, legal arguments, but even on how to clarify questions for the jury. So on Wednesday, when the questions came in, I think it was Wednesday, there was a question again that came in about, did he have to be there at the time of her murder? And so the judge was very, very specific. She took time to reflect on the question. She asked both the DPP's office representative, that KC, and the defense KC to send her their thoughts on how she was going to respond and instruct the jury on this. And she made it very clear, right? He does not, when you talk about a principal offender and the presence at the time of death, he did not, as a alleged principal offender, there is no requirement that he was actually there at the time of her death.
Correct.
And this is what people don't understand.
Public opinion is one thing. And I got a WhatsApp that actually says, people, this whole thing about at large don't understand a term, and I'm quoting, reasonable doubt. There was enough evidence in this person's opinion to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Mr. Wright removed the child from the residence. But on the second count of murder, whilst all things and public opinion points to him committing the murder, there's enough reasonable doubt to not convict him for murder.
And Ms. Brenda says that she gave manslaughter after the fact. No, she didn't. When the jurors, so at the end of a jury trial, the judge sums up, right? She gives them instructions, reminds them of what the offenses are that are being laid against this person, what the indictment says, and then goes through in summary form what the prosecution said and what the defense said.
Right.
At that time, she specifically instructed them, the charge is murder. If you cannot find him guilty of murder, you always have on the table the manslaughter option. It's never after the fact. It is always on the table.
Right.
Right? So, but I need to explain this because this is very, very important because the jurors seem to be very confused about this. If he didn't have his hand on little Elicity's neck and he caused her death, like he was the one with the hands on the neck and very last minute, he saw her take her last breath. Could he still be convicted of murder, although there's no evidence to that effect? And the judge's instructions were yes. He doesn't have to be there at the time of her death. The test is whether or not his actions as a principal were sufficient enough, right, for whoever caused her death. So it could have been, as she explained this in detail, it could have been somebody else that choked the little girl. But if he was there and he was part and parcel of all of that, then that is a high enough test. If you are convinced of that, that is a high enough test to find him guilty of murder.
Wow.
That is, I mean,
But
it's
there
not,
were no.
it's not,
Do you recall there being any DNA or forensic or evidence or fingerprinting that
there
proved he was
wasn't,
involved
there
directly?
wasn't, unfortunately. But
Okay.
the strange thing here is that, you know, how can you then find him? And I understand that obviously they're very separate offenses, but logically, from a logical perspective, it is bizarre that you could say he abducted her, but then what would be the purpose of
Purpose
abducting the
of
child?
yes.
Right? So this is where it gets really, really bizarre for me. And I agree with Ms. Brenda because it's such a bizarre situation. In my honest opinion, they probably should have found him guilty of nothing. I mean, it would make more logical sense, put it this way. They would have found him not guilty of nothing or guilty of everything. It is really bizarre to find him guilty of a lesser offense, which basically says that he took the child. Right? That's what abduction is all about. And then to say that he did not cause or contribute to the cause of the child's death. That is very, very bizarre.
So,
We got a
Sandra,
caller.
okay.
You want to take the call?
I think we should probably go through a couple more things before we start taking calls, because I think the legal understanding of this is important, right?
Okay,
So, Sandra,
caller, I'm going to ask you to just call back, please. I'll just act, or I'll call you back. Okay. Thanks for your
Sandra.
understanding. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, guys.
Not to kind of, but for those of us who aren't lawyers, right? Can you explain in plain English the difference between circumstantial evidence and direct evidence? And is circumstantial evidence necessarily weaker, or can it still be strong enough to convict someone, like in this case?
Okay, before I get to that, let me just say this again, right? The questions again that the jurors came back during deliberation speaks to where their mind was. So the question was whether or not he needed to be present at the time of her death, her very last breath. The judge said, this is a short legal answer, is no. English and Cayman law does not require a defendant to be physically present at the instant that death occurs in order to be guilty as a principle. What matters is that the defendant's own act caused the death, causation, not necessarily presence. Causation, not necessarily presence.
Oh my. That's hard for the average person to wrap their head around.
Right.
Which you could understand why it could
be. I honestly think, again, based on their questions and multiple days, I think this is where the jury struggled.
Yes, that's exactly where I was getting. How do you wrap your head around that?
I think that's where they struggled.
So do you feel then that was fair, that a fair trial was given? Or if that was where they were hung up on, just for someone not knowing?
I think, I mean, I don't know about fair or not fair. I think that jurors and, this is an interesting point, because some years ago, you might remember this, there was a discussion about whether or not we need to do away with the jury system and have judge by alone trial. I think if this was a judge by alone trial, the outcome would have been very different. Because the judge doesn't struggle with understanding causation versus presence. Right? Someone who has studied law and you've seen enough cases and you've studied enough case law, you get it. You understand. Right? Let me give you another example to make it very, very crystal clear. We had a gentleman, and no charges have yet been filed, right? But remember Mr. Christian, who went to the turtle farm?
Yes.
And he, got his turtle, or he was getting turtle meat, whatever. And an altercation ensued with this guy, and he ended up dying not then. So he was stabbed multiple times. He didn't die then. He died several days later at the hospital. Now, everyone assumes that the guy who, by the way, has not yet been charged. Everybody's like, well, what are they waiting on? Why haven't they charged him? It's because they need to ascertain the cause of death.
Causation.
So this is another example. And I wish that, this is where public education, if we're going to continue with jury trials, is so important, right? So let me tell you now, if they cannot show that the cause of his death, that the man who stabbed him, that was the principal cause of his death, right? And it was something else, although he died later, they can't charge him with murder.
Or murder.
Yeah. However, or manslaughter, so in the alternative manslaughter. However, even if time has passed, say it's a week later, and you still die as a result of those injuries sustained.
Burden of proof is that death was caused by, at that time.
Right. If that was the cause of your death, then that person is going to be charged with murder and in the alternative manslaughter. So the difference between murder and manslaughter is simply the mental element that's required. That's why it's there as an alternative to murder. So if the jury feels like, well, he did cause her death, right? We believe that he was there and, we believe that he did something to cause her death. Yeah. Because there's no doubt that the child was murdered. This wasn't an accidental drowning, accidental situation. Somebody killed that child.
Yes.
And the forensic evidence proved, right, that somebody strangled that baby. So that being the case, the alternative is somebody did it with intent, or someone did it and the intent isn't there. Or you don't feel confident enough that you can say the intent was there. So in the American system, they have things like voluntary manslaughter, right? But it can be reduced for things like provocation, diminished responsibility. So in our law, we have section 186 of the penal code that talks about provocation. Section 185 talks about diminished responsibility. So there are other things that can be there when you're looking at it being a manslaughter offense versus being a murder offense. But the important thing with murder is there has to be an intention to kill or intention to cause really serious, grievous bodily harm that then leads to that individual's death.
But Sandra, to that point though, right? Because I don't want to skip past when you were talking about jury trials versus judge-only trials, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that people are trying to understand, why abduction but not murder? Why not manslaughter? Where exactly was the reasonable doubt? I mean, just based on your explanation and my own experience as a juror, the jury doesn't have to tell us that. With a judge alone trial, we'd normally have a written or a reasoned judgment explaining, well, I accept this evidence, I reject this evidence.
And you see, despite what, and I know a lot of people at the time were like, no, we have, so jury trials, very American concept. People are like, in Europe and French trials and stuff, it's judges, right? A panel of judges sometimes. But it is really interesting how we have gotten affixed to the jury system because we think that we should be judged by a juror of our peers. But a juror of your peers, who are sometimes not even really your peers, right, may not, and I mean defense attorneys have their feelings on this in different ways, may not have the requisite understanding, even of the factual nexus. Because I said it earlier, the prosecution's case is going to be only as strong as the weakest juror.
Yep.
And I have seen jurors who lack understanding, basic understanding. I've seen jurors sit there who can't even speak proper English. Sometimes they get excused if it's bad enough. But, the jury pool here in the Cayman Islands is relatively small.
Very shallow.
It is very, very small. And so the options... Yeah, the options are slim. So I think we do need to have this broader conversation about maybe it is high time that we revise the judicial system and we look at judge alone. Because as Alfred said, with a judge alone, you're going to get a written judgment. You're going to understand his legal reasoning for what he said, right? He's going to make a note of it, write it down. And then you're going to also understand how he or she, as a judge, interpreted the facts.
Right.
And then that means, because take it from me, I've been there. Once I can see what his logic was and where he was going, I'm like, no, I think he made a mistake. So when I go to appeal it now before the Court of Appeal, they say, yes, we agree with you. Because we can see how he was expressing himself in the written judgment and where he was misguided. And I can speak to specific sections. You don't have any of that with a jury trial. Jurors go in there, they deliberate in private, obviously. We don't know what they were thinking exactly. We can speculate about it, but we have no clue what they were thinking. Once they walk out and it's done, that's it. And that is why it is so difficult to also challenge on appeal a jury decision. Unless you can prove something really wild like jury tampering or something like that, you are not going to be able to appeal a jury decision. And the only other thing that I normally see it appealed on is if the person is found guilty. The defense will challenge what the judge and how the judge explains certain things to them. Because it can be challenged that the judge erred in getting it wrong in terms of the judge's instructions to the jury. But I can tell you that Justice Peters was keeping it very tight on purpose. So before she responded to any of the jury questions, she consulted the defense. She consulted the prosecution. They went away. They drafted and exchanged email correspondence. Then in open court, because this process is supposed to be transparent, she asked them, okay, what are your oral arguments on this? If you have any objections to me changing it, removing this word under section 4, doing this, doing that. And they gave her their real-time feedback. And she would make the adjustments and say, are you in agreement that that properly answers or explains the question that the jurors have? And they all agreed, yes, we are. That's because she was closing, and this is what good judges obviously do, she was closing the possibility of anyone being able to appeal on the basis that she got the instructions incorrect.
Okay.
Yeah, but let me go back to a question that Alfred asked, because I think it's a really important question, where he talked about circumstantial evidence, right? So in trials, we have direct evidence, which is things like testimony, proof that speaks straight to the fact at issue, an eyewitness who saw you do it, a confession, forensic evidence, physically linking the person to the act. Then there's circumstantial evidence, which is basically everything else that falls outside of that. Okay, so circumstantial evidence is evidence of surrounding facts and circumstances from which the jury is asked to infer the fact in issue. Now, there are cases that are largely circumstantial, if not 100% circumstantial, and there's still one. So there's this key legal point that circumstantial evidence is not lesser evidence. Although most people, the average person on the street would tell you that, that is not the legal position. Okay? Oh, well, it only had circumstantial evidence, so how can they convict of anything? The law draws no formal hierarchy in a case. There are cases built entirely on circumstantial evidence that can support a conviction just as safely as one built on direct evidence, provided the standard of proof is met. So the judges will say, when it comes to the standard of proof, that you may draw inferences from proven facts, but an inference must be a reasonable and justified conclusion, not speculation or guesswork. So maybe the big difference with circumstantial evidence is that it works in a cumulative way, right? So individual strands of circumstantial evidence might be weak, like if you just looked at one thing, or ambiguous on their own. But when you put it all together, it paints a much broader or wider understanding of what the case actually is. It's like you have a rope, layman's example. you have strands of the rope, right? Each individual strand on its own is not really all that compelling. So no single strand is going to be strong enough to bear the weight of anything. But when you have it all woven together, the rope holds up. And there's actually a leading authority on this case about circumstantial evidence. It's a 19th century English case called R versus Exile. And it spoke to this very same point. So,
Sure.
if there's a reasonable possibility consistent with innocence that is left open by the evidence, the jury cannot convict. So circumstantial evidence or circumstantial case has to exclude realistic alternative explanations, not just make guilt the more likely explanation.
And we understand how this was so grasped national attention with the pool of jurors that we do have being so small. You wanted them to only make their decision based on the facts that was presented and not by assumption or what they think. And this is why. And I'm so happy that you're able to break this down in the way in which you're doing, because like you rightfully say, if some people don't understand, they may have language issues. That is why you would see them being very selective in who they choose to sit on a juror, because
so,
both sides want to win.
Yeah. And when we see what the Crown did here, right, their case had no direct evidence at all. So there's no eyewitnesses to it. There was no forensic evidence. There was no confession. There was no established motive. I think that, if they had one of those like established motive, we might have gotten a little bit further here. But I also think because it took the jury basically 3 days to come to this decision, it was not a situation where everybody was convinced that the Crown didn't have a case. Gotcha. That clearly is not what happened here.
Gotcha.
They didn't come to the unanimous decision as is required for murder. And obviously, manslaughter, they could have done the majority, and they did not go in that direction either.
So you think this has a lot to do with how the case was presented? Or again, a lot of it would be what evidence that was not there and just based on speculation. I think, Alfred, that's where you were going.
I mean, it's, it's difficult to say because we don't know what the jurors thought. Like, we don't know how they came to the conclusion, unfortunately, that they came to. And, let's talk a little bit because I think it is important. Like I said, we live in a small community. And whilst we don't deal in speculation, I do think that the Crown could have done a better job talking about what a potential motive might have been. Okay. So, for example, they did bring up the fact that she was having financial difficulties, the mother.
Right.
And they talked about that because, it came up in cross-examination. The Crown mentioned it. She admits to having financial problems. The two of them as a couple were having financial problems. What the Crown the road they didn't go down, and I have to wonder, why, is to ask her what the cause of those financial problems were. Like, what were they being caused by? Because this is a woman who had, by all accounts, a decent job at Maples and Calder, one of the largest, if not the largest law firm on this island. So what kind of financial issues she was having and what was the cause of it? Because what the streets are saying is that she actually has a drug problem and that this guy happens to be in the drug business as one of the things that he does, right? And there's another family member who is since deceased, and everybody in the bracket is talking about he was the one with the red truck, the red SUV or whatever vehicle it was that supposedly came and helped with the movement and transportation of the body from point A to point B where it was later found. And so if they had explored this line of questioning more, right? Because that person's name came up in the trial. That yes, when the body, I said, call him to come and help search for her. That was in her testimony. And so I honestly believe that the jurors would have been more inclined to understand the broader picture here. because that individual also has on the streets a known history of being a drug dealer. He was killed in a really bizarre accident 7 months after poor Elicity's death. And people say he is the missing link. And as they say, dead men tell no tales. But it says that he is the missing link as it relates to this child's murder. And he's a serious, by all accounts, anybody you talk to, law enforcement, anybody in the BRAC who knows their salt will tell you he was a serious man. If you owed him money for drugs, you better go find his money for his drugs or else. So when you talk about, well, what was the motive? Why would anybody harm a little 2-year-old child? Motive.
Message sent.
The financial issues, not being able to pay your drug guy, your dealer, and the dealer is a no nonsense person who would set your house on fire, set your car on fire, and potentially put so much pressure on these persons that either one of them just lost it and killed this child themselves. There were threats that were made between her and Devon's sister about, I'll kill for you, I'll kill for my brother, and this all kind of nonsense. They needed to explore the nature of these connections, the drug use, and the relationships more than they did.
And that would have been the responsibility or the onus of the Crown in their presentation, you feel?
Yes. Yeah. Because in circumstantial evidence, right? I mean, I've seen these cases all the time. You have highly circumstantial evidence. Sometimes you don't even have a body.
Mm-hmm.
Yet people convict. You look in the States all the time. You watch these cases on TV. The wife has gone missing. Body can't be found, blah, blah, blah. And still they convict the husband. How?
Mm-hmm.
Because they could give you a reason, even if it wasn't lock and barrel, okay, he took out an insurance policy. He was cheating on the wife, right? He was going to get a big insurance payout. He already put in the claim. Because then the people go, okay, we don't have a body, which means we have no forensic evidence a lot of times, right? And despite that, the alleged motive was so compelling in the minds of the jurors that they still returned a guilty verdict. I think the weakest point, I should say, in this case, that there was no explanation in terms of why anybody would want to hurt a child, little 2-year-old girl. And I think that they should have explored that more and put her under questioning. Now, I also understand that she obviously testified. Devon did not take the stand. There was no defense. Something that Alfred said earlier that I think is worth noting, right? He talked about there's the burden of proof and there is who the burden of proof is actually placed on. The defense has no requirement to put on a defense whatsoever. And there's a lot of people who miss that. And judges always make sure they reiterate that and they stress that. So there's no reason whatsoever that a defendant has to take the stand. They don't have to say a single thing. The defense doesn't have to say anything. So they will normally, in their summing up, try to poke little holes in the prosecution's case to try to create that reasonable doubt. But the burden of proof falls squarely on the prosecution. They have to bring the case up to that bar. And if they fail to do so, then there is no case. The defense doesn't have to answer to anything. They don't have to provide an explanation for anything. That's not their job. So in criminal cases, the prosecution definitely has the more difficult job, if you will.
To do,
right? Because they got to bring it and they got to bring that evidence, that information, circumstantial or direct, and the burden's on them to that higher standard. And so, that is the difficulty, if you will, of the job that they have. I mean, no one should take it lightly. And I do understand that they had the mother testify against this guy. Now, I see an opening for them, right? And I think probably the strategy, and we don't know this for a fact, so this is just my personal opinion, the strategy of the DPP's office was if they get a conviction, right, then they would go after the mother. So this is almost like a trial run. They use her to testify in the first instance against the father, but there's nothing stopping them from going after her after this in any event, whether he was found guilty or innocent. But I think that they would have felt more confident in doing so if they'd gotten a guilty conviction. And then maybe if he's like, okay, I'm looking at 30 years, life sentence in prison, maybe I need to just finally break down and tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. And everybody who had a part to play in this is now going to be named. And he would have just spilled the beans.
Okay. Very interesting. Well, it's the next chapter.
They can still go after the mother.
After the mother. You keep saying that. And, let's look at the flip side now as what this family could actually be going through right now with this decision.
I mean, obviously, it's incredibly difficult for them, no matter what. And even a guilty verdict, they'll feel like there was some justice, but it doesn't bring this poor child back.
Exactly.
And this family, I want to just give my thoughts to Miss Janet, the paternal grandmother, and all of her family members. They were there every single day. I mean, these people took off of work. They were there showing support. And I do want to say one thing, which the general public, there's a couple of things that the general public and even the jurors would not be aware of. Devin actually is in court again on Monday for another trial. Okay. There was a media restriction on the fact that he also just got convicted in a robbery and was sentenced to 15 years. We couldn't divulge that in our reporting or any way whatsoever because they did not want that to prejudice the current jury in his case. And the court is very, very strict about this sort of thing. So if there are other cases that, he was just found guilty, he was just convicted of, or even that he has other stuff coming up, that is not something they will ever tell a sitting juror. So they don't know, and they didn't know that he was just convicted and got 15 years sentence.
For another totally unrelated case.
Completely unrelated. And so then they wouldn't also know that the only person that came to court to ever support him was his current girlfriend, and she actually is facing charges for sneaking drugs into the prison to him. They wouldn't know that either. And they wouldn't know that she actually has a no contact order where she's to have no contact with him, but yet she was being permitted to come to court. This is where now the DPP's office is clueless, and the police are obviously clueless because there are officers there in the court, right? How can you have someone with a no contact order, but yet they're able to come in court and have some degree of contact with him in court? Even blowing each other kisses and stuff like this during, as he enters the court.
Oh.
Wow.
So what's the definition of a no contact order? Does that go away just because it's in a court?
I wouldn't think so. That's contact, isn't it?
Yeah, in every sense. But unless it's because you're in the courts on that grounds. I mean, I would love to get that. Make that explained.
To me, no contact means no contact. It means no phone calls. It means you don't go in a space where you'd be able to see the person, communicate with the person, sign language, blowing kisses. That's contact. And by the way, I understand that even this evening after this verdict, she's on social media posting stuff. You see, this is the kind of stuff now where, y'all need to have respect. The girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
This is now where people need to have respect, regardless of where you are on this. If you believe that he did it, if you think maybe he didn't do it, maybe it was the mother, whatever. There's certain things that you just don't do. You just don't go on social media and start posting stuff about this like he has won some big, thing here. I mean, this is just crazy. Now, there is one point of clarification. I mentioned this person who died 7 months later and allegedly was a known drug dealer in Cayman Brac, et cetera, et cetera. Someone says the third person in that house is actually his daughter. And she was named because she's been arrested. She hasn't yet been charged, Chantel McLean, but she was arrested. And so again, this connection, right? If the DPP's office had made that connection, had explained about this guy who's now deceased, that his daughter was actually the third person in the house that night. You see how it starts to, the thread, that rope starts to make more sense. But they didn't really do any of that. Now, supposedly in the mother's testimony, she was asleep and didn't wake up until there was noise starting to be made about, Felicity is missing. Let's go find her. That sort of thing.
This is just crazy. This is just crazy. Well, Alfred, are you weighing in any more on this? And at what point do you want us to? I think you've given sufficient explanation that we could open the lines back. You think? Yeah. So the phone lines are
I'm
open.
just listening. I'm listening because I'm learning as well.
Exactly. Like so many of us right here this evening. 936-8255 is the number to call. I know we had a caller and I told them that I would call them back. I don't want to renege on that. So I'll go with the first call. Let's see if they are willing to answer the call. So yeah. But oh my gosh. So this is not the end of this. This could come back up again. See where we got some comments are coming in. Good evening, caller. You are live.
Good evening. Hello, Sandra.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
We talked about sharing. Don't forget what we spoke about sharing today, okay? I need to bring some kind of lightness to this very serious topic. I actually spoke with Sandra about this earlier today, and the same questions that are being raised now are the same questions that I posed to her, and we are just, I think we're all flabbergasted. But I will say this, and I will not even begin to try to make people believe that I understand what they're going through. I have no idea. And I am so very sorry to the family of this little girl. Nothing that anybody says, no sentence will ever be enough. It brings a sense of justice, but no sentence, will ever be enough. But speaking to the legal side, the trial, and this whole trial, I am beyond perturbed by the verdict. I am beyond perturbed with what happened. And Sandra, since you covered so much of it, my question is, there's clearly a gap between what happened and proving who did it. Well, the who did it, in terms of the abduction, what we now know is being called the abduction, said Devon Wright is guilty. But in terms of what happened, we know factually that her death was unlawful. We know she was dead before she entered the water. Dead people don't walk. Dead people do not walk. No tails. That's it. Except the evidence that is left behind, on her body, which her young 2-year-old body absolutely gave evidence of. The issue that I have is if it is that the jury, I'm trying to find where the disconnect is, and I guess we can sit here and speculate all day. It was a circumstantial case, like you said. It's no more, no less. We have leading authority for circumstantial cases that have been one slam dunk, including murder cases. But this one was, I looked at the discovery. I don't think that the Crown expounded upon a lot of things that I think could have helped this I think saying very limited is being kind. They had absolutely no evidence. This was who took the cookie from the cookie jar, right? And for me, the verdict would be legally incorrect to say perverse, but it feels perverse. It doesn't feel wrong. It feels like somebody said something wrong that caused this to go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely believe in fairness and justice. And if that young man was not guilty, should he have been convicted? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And I will not stay here and say that. And I guess to a degree, there has to be a level of, I don't know if it's respect or kindness or empathy, but a level of understanding more than anything that we can't say that the jury got it wrong. We may not be pleased with the verdict, but we have to know, we have to, what we see, in my opinion, and I, where I stand, we see how very limited the evidence was. They didn't even have a motive. It was, like I said, it was a who took the cookie from the cookie jar. There were 3 people in the house, and he did it because he was sweaty and he smelled like he was outside.
Yeah.
That in of itself raises questions for me. That if I think it was just such a heinous crime that we wanted somebody to answer for it. And this kid has got a rap sheet as long as here to Jerusalem. Let's put it on him, because why not? I am not saying that he is not guilty. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it is just so we want a conviction so bad that we're willing to settle for everything. Now, we may have convicted an innocent young man, or we may have lessened the charges on a murderer. And for me, and I think you speak to this so often, they are so eager to charge that they don't, in my opinion, and I think this is one of those cases that they're so eager to charge that they're just rushing it into court. Now, for the public, it's taken 4 years, right? But let's not forget that these things do take time. There are advances in science and methodology in terms of how do you approach this now. Laws may have even changed with respect to the penal code that may have resulted in an upgrade of charges. And there's a host of things that could have changed. And I still stand here today and say, it's a rush to charge. And again, I don't want to ruffle nobody's feathers, but
I mean, caller, let's think about this, right? This offense took place in 2022. What year are we in now?
26.
26.
I don't think by any standard that's a rush to charge. If you can't build a case in 3 to 4 years.
No. They charged them very soon. The case took 4 years.
No, they didn't. No. They did not. No, they did not even arrest them until late last year. They didn't charge them. They didn't arrest and charge them after this happened.
Just, okay, your opinion. Not a qualified lawyer, you and me working with the same thing. Do you think that the evidence that they had to charge this young man was sufficient, that you believe should have rose to the level of criminality?
No, what I want to say, I'm addressing this point that you said they rushed to charge. I don't think that they rushed to charge 3 years later. Okay?
No,
3 years is
3
not
years
rushing.
is what she's pointing out. It's not
3 years is not a rush.
I hear you. No, I hear you. That 3 years doesn't seem like a rush, but Sandra, 3 years seems like a rush when after 3 years you still have no real evidence. You still
but you can't. I want to stress again. You can't say that circumstantial evidence is not real evidence. That's where laypersons go wrong, because they don't understand what circumstantial evidence is. You can't say circumstantial evidence isn't real evidence. It's a different type of evidence.
Agreed.
That does not mean it is not real evidence.
But it is the Crown's job to lay out their case. It is not for the
And I agree with that. Like I said, there are people right now who are messaging me saying, "Oh my God, wait a minute, the third person was so and so's daughter," and did it. So they're putting it together, and they're like, "Wow, yeah." Had the jury even known that, that would have made a significant difference.
I agree, but what I'm saying is, and forgive me, not that circumstantial evidence is none, but Sandra, what was the circumstantial evidence in this case? That he was present and he was sweating?
Well, I mean, there was only 3 people there.
Of what I read, but I mean, I read in part of in the closing arguments that the Crown basically said, his defense attorney basically said what you said. Look, you can place him there, so you can place her mother there. There was another person there. How do you arrive at the fact that it must have been him? Their conclusion.
But once again, go back to what, because that was the jury question. Go back to what the judge said to them. You do not have to prove that it was him specifically that put his hands around her neck and he was there at the presence of her death. And this is where the jury struggled.
But the thing is this misdirection, poor direction, or bad understanding? Because this makes no sense.
Could be a combination of a number of things with the juror based on how the case was presented.
I think the jurors just didn't understand it.
That's what it's boiling down to.
They do not understand how someone can be present or not present and still that causation link is there as a principle.
Oh,
I know they struggled with that because they asked the question at least twice. So they didn't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And a case like this turns on a nuance like that very, very easily.
Cause a link for the prosecution to break down and explain. That is their job. The defendant doesn't have to prove he didn't do it. You have to prove that he did.
No, I understand, but I think they don't understand what the legal principle is about what a principal offender is.
Agreed. And again, that is the role of the Crown. What is the role of the Crown? Did anybody win here today? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do I think that the Crown went into this thing? I mean, we brought in a whole special case to try this case. You understand? And it's just sad and unfortunate, but move forward, at least for me, because I'm already at the sentencing phase. Do we have any case law that sets a high sentence for abduction? Do we?
Well, I don't think he's going to get as much as what he's serving right now for the robbery, to be honest. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find it. But on the abduction offense, again, obviously that stands on its own merits. I think that the average person doesn't understand because that every offense is on its own merit. So the jurors obviously believed that the circumstantial evidence was enough for abduction, but the circumstantial evidence was not enough for murder. And in the minds of most people, I obviously can understand why they would struggle with how the two are not connected.
I don't understand how the two, because all of the evidence that, and I'm not sure. I think we said that the mother got her own forensic report that proved that the child was unlawfully killed. Right.
So let's just clarify this point, right? The forensic pathologist who testified, and he's again a UK Home Office forensic pathologist, told the Grand Court on the 5th or the 4th around there that the head and neck injuries suffered by this young child, 2-year-old Felicity, were inconsistent with an accident. Dr. Brett Lockyer testified that the pattern and extent of injuries found on the toddler's head could not be explained by any accidental event. So it wasn't a situation where they dropped on her head or she bumped into something. He said the bruising that was present across all areas of the scalp made it highly unlikely that it resulted from a fall or any other accidental cause. And that bruising can only form while the heart is still beating. So it wasn't like she was dead and then, maybe she got bruising on her brain or her neck or whatever. Afterwards, during the movement of the body, that basically does not happen. That's not how the body bruises. And the UK child pathologist, there's another one that basically came to the same findings, or his findings were that she died from asphyxiation caused by compression of the neck. So in layman's terms, something strangled her, or someone strangled her.
I've
Sandra,
merged another caller to the call, but go ahead, Alfred. Just letting
Sandra-
you know, Siobhan, that there's another caller on with you. Okay, go ahead, Alfred.
Sandra, I want to ask you a question, right? Because listening to you speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and understand what you're saying that the judge said that somebody doesn't necessarily have to be physically present.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that the jury understood that legal principle but still felt the evidence didn't prove the necessary connection in this particular case?
Say that again for me. Sorry.
All right. So from listening to what you're saying, right? Listening to what you're saying. Because the law is asking ordinary people to think in a way that can feel counterintuitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of us naturally think, if you say he killed her, show me that he was there when she was killed, right? But the law can ask a different question. Even if he didn't personally carry out the fatal act, did he intentionally participate in or help bring about the cause of the death, right? Just listening to you speak, I'm saying, is it possible that the jury understood the legal principle but still felt that the evidence didn't prove the necessary connection in this case?
It's possible. I don't think that they did, to be honest. Not. I mean, they kept coming back to it. You know what I mean? So I think they simply didn't understand.
So there's. I just want to welcome the second caller. So Siobhan, I don't know to give it, for persons, either you join in or you are aware that we have another person on the line.
That's fine.
Caller?
Sabrina, actually, it's me again. Andrew just brought up a very great question. I know that Sandra has a different view on it. Respectfully, I disagree with Sandra. I think the jury very much understood the legal instructions that were given to them. What the jury struggled with was the lack of evidence. But this case, after reading everything I've read, listened to everything I've listened to, I forgot to mention this when I called earlier. The prosecution also said they relied on information that was brought to them by the mother of the child. So had it not been for what she was feeding them with, they would never have gone after this guy. And let me repeat myself. This is an eye-opener to the sloppy investigations that we get done and then botched prosecution. All of this information that is now coming out about the connection with these individuals, if the police had in fact done any investigation, they would have known that before now. The other thing that was also, I would say, the biggest stumbling block was the first pathologist report. They assumed that because she was found on the iron shore, that she had drowned. And they ruled it as an accidental drowning without taking into consideration, which they should do by law, the circumstances of how she ended up there. She's 2 years old. She wasn't wearing shoes. There were no cuts, no bruises on her feet. The bruising on her head that Sandra speaks, though, yes, I agree. to have it in those places, it wasn't accidental. In other words, she didn't fall, hit her head somewhere. It would be in a concentrated area. So we know that they were done before she died because, as Sandra pointed out, if she was already dead, there would be no evidence of bruising. Once the heart stops beating, there's no blood pumping anywhere. So doesn't matter what you do afterwards, it's not showing up as a bruise or whatever. You can even cut the person and it doesn't bleed. So this all goes back to the beginning. It was a sloppy investigation. There was perhaps the lack of an investigation. And then only when she decided that she wanted to talk, and this is the admission of the prosecutor that they brought in, they relied on her information. Then they went to charge the guy. And yes, I do understand what your other caller is saying. It was a rush to charge, not because the incident took place 4 years ago. They didn't intend to charge anyone because they were relying on that first autopsy report. And yes, when they decided they would charge someone, they rushed it. I'm not speaking for the caller, but that's what I understand the caller saying. There's no statute of limitation on murder, so you don't have to rush that. And in a case like this, when clearly to any brain would have a kind of sense, you know more than one person was involved. So wait it out. Just wait it out. Or charge simultaneously, jointly, and then you would have had a much different result. The other thing about being present at the time, unless the laws have changed, unless I was last instructed, if all were if they could prove that all acted in concert, then one single person could be charged separately. But it didn't mean the others were not guilty as well. But they didn't even bring that up. They didn't even explain that to the jury. I think this jury should be commended because at least they asked informed questions. They didn't rush. They kept asking. They were asked. He, the defendant, chose them as a jury of his peers. And they respected that, obviously. They took an oath. And I don't say that we should get rid of the jury system. I wouldn't like to see that gone. Because under the present system, you have the right to have a judge-only trial. The option is to have a jury. And those decisions can be appealed. Because the jury can get it wrong because of evidence. And the judge can get it wrong. Because we have to be fair here now. Judges are human beings too. They also went to school. They did exams. How well did they do? How well are they understanding the law? And to listen to the instructions given in one case versus another case that is quite similar, and they be so far apart, I find it rather troubling. So,
okay.
Miss
Thank you for
Brenda,
that, Alfred.
but Miss Brenda, thank you so much for calling in. But I think I think because I sort of touched on it when I was saying to Sandra about the argument for getting rid of the jury system is that jury with a judge, again, this, I have no legal background, but this is just what I'm understanding, that with a judge, when you have a judge only case, a judge has to give written reasons why the judgment played out. This was the evidence I considered, this was the evidence I ignored, this was the verdict I came to, and da 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 da. A jury doesn't have to give any, because I remember when I was on jury duty and the judge told us we can look at all of the evidence, some of the evidence, or none of the evidence.
Could I interject there, please?
Sure.
The judge has the rule on the law and the evidence only. He cannot act on emotion or what anybody else may have fed to him. The jury are not expected to know the law. So jurors act on the evidence presented to them and their emotions. And remember, every juror is going to construe something very differently. That's why you have deliberations. I may not explain something, but you got it better than me. And I can turn to you and say, I didn't quite get that part. Did I get the tell me what you understood? You can change my mind, or I can stand by the position that I'm holding. That's where you end up with hung juries.
I understand that, Miss Brenda, but what I'm saying to you is that when it comes to what I'm saying to you, ma'am, is that if it comes to a judgment that one side finds dissatisfactory, again, this is what I'm understanding, a jury doesn't have to give a reason why they chose guilty or not guilty. A judge alone trial has to.
Right, and that's the law. That's the law. And that's what I say. That's the law. So you, as the accused, have the option to choose a jury or a judge only. There's nothing wrong with that. That's your prerogative, just like it's your prerogative to not take the witness stand. And the judge will instruct the juror also that you cannot hold it against that person because they didn't take the witness stand. It doesn't point to guilt, so don't even consider that. And any good defense attorney, especially holding a strong hand, is not going to put his client on the witness stand. And I don't know who this defense attorney is, but I can tell you what, he's certainly worth his salt. That much I'd say about him.
Well, ladies, thank you so much, Miss Brenda. Thank you for that. If that's a wrap up, Siobhan, I'll ask you to wrap up. We are in overtime and we got to wrap this up. So I'll ask you both if that's it. Miss Brenda, thank you for your contributions. Oh, you're gone. Siobhan, can I ask you to wrap it up? Then we just give our closing thoughts from our two guests.
I think I don't even know how to close this one. I will leave it to Sandra to wrap up and I'll listen.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution.
So again, let me be very, very clear. Can a jury verdict be challenged? Yes, but only in specific, very limited ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can it be appealed? So they're responsible for the factual conclusion. So there's nothing in that you can challenge them on, right? That's the trial process. That's how the legal framework around the verdict works. If there's to be an appeal where a convicted defendant, he hasn't been convicted on the most serious offense here, he could appeal against a conviction or sentence. The Crown generally cannot appeal a jury's not guilty verdict. He has what they call a double jeopardy protection. And that is why an acquittal on a murder count, as in this case, is for all practical purposes final. There are some very narrow, what we consider modern day exceptions to this common law rule, and what we call tainted acquittals, where the acquittal itself was procured by jury or witness intimidation. That's what I alluded to earlier. This is very, very exceptional. And obviously, I don't think in this case that there'll be any grounds for that.
Sandra, we got 2 WhatsApp questions that I think you can answer, please. One says, can someone say what the local pathologist said was the cause of death? Number one, because that has come up more than once. And the second one, could they have come back as a hung juror and retired the case?
So let's talk about this because Ms. Brenda did say this and she was right on this point for sure. The local postmortem, I don't know who completed that, right? So this was the original official cause of death, claimed that it was an accidental drowning. In fact, the pathologist took that all the way to the inquest. And that is what was presented to them. And the RCIPS accepted that finding initially. That is true. There are around 32 injuries on the child's body that they assessed as having occurred after death. You've since had 2 experts from overseas who've said that that's not correct. To be factually fair and accurate, the child's mother, Ivani Dixon Powell, rejected the drowning findings from the very beginning. She has always said, and remember, she did a whole video. We downloaded it. We discussed it where she's like, somebody killed her baby. She knows it. She has always been very firm in the position that this child was murdered. And to me, that speaks volumes. She needs to sit and get on her knees in prayer and really reflect on why she knows the child was murdered. So she engaged and privately funded and commissioned her own U.S. forensic pathologist to re-examine the case. And it was him that came to a different conclusion. And that then pushed the RCIPS to bring in a UK Home Office specialist team, Dr. Brett Lockyer and his colleagues, and they ultimately concluded that the death was not consistent with drowning and was indeed caused by compression of the neck or strangulation. In December of 2024, they reversed the cause of death. And then obviously by last year, my apologies, they then announced that they were arresting all 3 persons who were in the home. Thus far, this man is the only person who has been found, who has been taken to trial, who's actually been charged. The other 2 people have not yet been charged.
Okay.
There's one other thing that I think is worth discussing. When we are talking about abduction, right? And what the sentence is. The statutory maximum for abduction in the Cayman Islands under Section 220 of the Penal Code is life. Abduction can only be tried in the Grand Court and carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment.
Interesting.
Think about that in light of even the decision now that the jurors made. Does it matter if you get him in life imprisonment for murder or life imprisonment for abduction? If life is life, and that is the statutory maximum, he could get life still. Now, it is unusual, albeit, for the maximum to be, typically what you get. Life is the top. Life is the ceiling. That's the maximum. However.
And how long is life?
At least 30 years, I think.
Okay.
However, there's several cases here. Again, it's not, abduction is very unusual of an offense. You don't hear about it very often. So there was a 2011 case of Kelly and Webster where 2 men were convicted of abducting an adult male for ransom. It was part of a kidnap for money gang situation. They were sentenced to 10 years, and that was later cut to 8 years on appeal. And then Jeffrey Barnes is the other case where obviously he has a very serious history of sexual violence, whose offending included a separate abduction alongside rape and indecent assault, and he received a 35-year determinate sentence, which later was reduced to 21 years. So those are the 2 cases that we have on record. Unfortunately, Wright's case doesn't really fit neatly into any of those, so there's no real precedent involving the ransom or kidnapping case of an adult, an abduction hurdled with sexual offenses. That's not this type of a thing, right? But given the fact that it was a toddler involved, taken from her mother's lawful custody, who was later found dead, I think that, we'll have to wait and see. But we could still be looking at very, very serious sentences, a serious sentence, which the judge will determine that. No jury's involved in that. And his pre-existing convictions will also play a role. Because remember, I just told you he just got 15 years. So his pre-existing convictions will play a role in how this judge now looks at the abduction conviction and what she decides to sentence him on. So the victim's age and vulnerability, the fact that she was removed from a sleeping household in the middle of the night, these are all what we would consider aggravating circumstances. The fact that she was found dead shortly after, these are all things that will add to his sentence. So even without a murder or manslaughter conviction, based on sentencing alone, he could be looking at quite a substantial amount of time for the abduction offense. And in fact, someone sent me something earlier on this point here, which is, let me just read this because you'll find this interesting, I think, that the mid-range is 5 to 10 years, typically handed down for standard cases of forcible abduction, where the victim is recovered, but you have significant psychological or physical trauma. Lesser, under 5 years, reserved for minor roles in a crime, like the lookout driver, or cases where the defendant enters an immediate plea. And then the influence of the murder acquittal. So even though the defendant was acquitted of murder, the sentencing judge can take into account the totality of the circumstances surrounding the kidnapping. For instance, listen carefully. For instance, if the kidnapping directly resulted in the victim disappearing or being placed in a highly dangerous environment, the judge is legally permitted to hand down a sentence at the much higher end of the spectrum, closer to 10 to 20 years or life, despite the lack of a homicide conviction.
Interesting. Very interesting. So we'll have to wait to hear the sentencing.
Yeah.
To see if all these factors would come into play. Now, Alfred, did you have a wrap up? Because it is at 7:14, and then Sandra, you can wrap it up, and we can say our farewell for the evening. Want to thank all of those persons.
I know you said there were 2 WhatsApp questions. I
heard
one.
I wrote them. I read them, and yeah.
We had an audience on Instagram this evening. Liz says someone needs to be responsible either way. If this was the U.S., the parents would have had all sorts of charges for child endangerment. So there's still a lot of people that believe that the mother had a role to play in this and that she should not be, able to get off scot-free. I saw some of the other comments in the comment section where people were saying, listen, she was out partying afterwards, living her best life, no slowing down or whatever. And I think that just adds insult to injury, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Caymanians know what that means, right? Yeah. So folks, I do want to thank Sabrina for allowing us to come onto her program this evening, for taking the time. Obviously, she does the evening drive time from 5 to 7. Yes. And given the seriousness of this trial and the decision that came down today, we thought that it was important to have this discussion immediately in the wake of it. I will touch on it again. Juliet says that she's still out there partying and living her best life. I will, pick up the conversation on Monday morning show as well. And we thank you all for being respectful with your opinions and your questions that came through today. Yes. And, yeah. And the other one was, I know a lot of times you're not live on Instagram, but you had such a great audience this evening. At one point, I think about 60 people or so on IG alone. So big thanks to the Instagram folks for tuning in as well.
The other one I think you missed about what if they had come back as a hung juror and retired the case? Could they have come back as a hung?
If they were hung, then the prosecution can have a second chance at trying the person again. Yeah. Okay. Andrew is asking, what's the connection between the mother and the accused? Yeah. They were in a relationship, Andrew, as boyfriend and girlfriend at that time. Julia. And he was at times staying with her in Cayman Brac.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Alfred?
Yeah, I just wanted to close off by just saying because I'm looking at the comments that are coming in as well on Facebook. To everybody following this case, please be careful with your words. You may have questions. You may disagree with the verdict, or you might feel angry or dissatisfied. Most of us didn't sit through weeks of testimony or hear every piece of evidence that the jury heard. So challenge the system, yes. Question the investigation, and continue to ask the hard questions. But do not casually accuse people of crimes or repeat rumors as truth. There was one particular comment that caught my attention, and I just want to say, please also reject any talk of street justice or jungle justice. However strongly we feel, frustration with a verdict can never justify threats, violence, or taking the law into our own hands. That only creates more victims and more injustice. Remember that there's a grieving family at the center of this. Speak responsibly, speak with compassion, and when we don't know something, let us be disciplined enough to simply say we just don't know. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a lot to take in for sure.
Definitely. And, as we look into this weekend, and so nicely said, Alfred, you pretty much wrapped it up. We have to look at both sides of this, anger, frustration, everything. And it kind of makes you, I know,
And one quick point. The original pathologist who got this wrong, who was that person? Are they still working here in the Cayman Islands?
I'm not so sure, which was one question that I got. How could our local pathologist get this wrong?
And pathologists work for who? The HSA?
HSA.
Once again, another failure under the HSA. And yet nothing happens over there in terms of accountability. I'm going to do some digging in that front because I'm curious to know who that pathologist was. And if they're still employed here in the Cayman Islands, they should have been terminated. Lizette should have fired them because that's quite a substantial mistake.
To the best of my knowledge, and I stand to be corrected, there has been a long-standing time that we don't have a full-time pathologist here, but they, whenever they're needed, then they fly in. So whether or not it's a network, a particular arrangement that they have with a particular company, then these people are flown in. But to the best of my knowledge, it's not like we have all the time, 24 hours, 7 days a week, a pathologist on island. Now, has that changed? Maybe, but again, with your digging, I'm quite sure you can come to the bottom of this. But during that time, 3-4 years ago, these people were flying in very often to do a lot of pathology work and autopsies, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking into it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So there we have it. Thank you to our two guests under the circumstances. It's always good to have these types. And that's why I'm so happy for this space, that we can be so flexible. But again, please do have a good evening. Alfred, I'm quite sure people will log on at 10 o'clock for your show. Love. Oh, give me that, Alfred. You pull yourself out. You so polite. Hey,
sorry. Love and lies. That was my fault.
Yeah. You pulled us out. So yeah, tune in at 10 for Love and Lies and to hear more on that show. But thank you both for joining me.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Sure. Good night. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Sabrina Speaks. As we look forward into the weekend, I'm asking you all to keep these families in your thoughts and prayers. I know that it is heart-wrenching, but there was so much here. It's so emotional, and even looking at the whole justice system. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. We will continue to keep an eye on this and waiting for the sentencing and see exactly how that unfolds. But yes, I want to thank all of you for joining us. Thank you for your comments, for your calls, for your WhatsApp messages. And I'm hoping that there was a lot of takeaway from this, that if you didn't have an understanding of how it works, that you are better informed this evening. And again, for all those persons who contributed. And at the time of her death, I think it would help a lot. There's still some questions or comments coming in. Science, man strong, whoever, babe man is, oh Lord. Anyhow, Please do have a good weekend. I'm looking forward for another informing, engaging episode of Sabrina Speaks on Monday at 5. Looking forward to having you join me. Please be safe. Good night. God bless. You know how we do it here. Love you lots. See you on Monday. That's a wrap for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks. Thank you for tuning in and for being part of the conversation. Remember, the dialogue doesn't stop here. Stay engaged, stay informed, and most importantly, stay empowered. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m., same time, same place, right here on CMR TV and radio, where your voice matters and your truth is heard. Until then, K-Man, take care of yourself and each other.
That's it for today's edition of Sabrina Speaks, where your voice matters, your story counts, and your truth is always welcome. Join us weekdays from 5 until 6:30 p.m. right here on CMR TV as we dive into the topics that matter most to you. Catch the show live or on demand at cmrtv.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram so you never miss a moment. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and always speak your truth.